Others worship AI outrightly, with one notable AI-based religious movement being the way of the future. Still others hope AI will help us become like God. That's what AI. And I just saw this past week or a couple days ago. Bill Gates made this statement. Within 10 years, uh, AI, there will be no more doctors or teachers. AI will take care of it, and that human beings are not needed. Now, I wonder what Bill Gates sees when he looks in the mirror. I mean, but anyways, I mean, this is how powerful this is. Did you ever hear about these things 10 years ago? No, you haven't. Within 5 years ago? No, you haven't. This is all brand new stuff, and it's coming out, and it's escalating. And in fact, let me keep going here about this. I don't want to read this whole article, but it's labeled The End of Privacy, and it goes along with AI, but a new version of AI. So let me just read this. Microsoft and Google have recently been touting their breakthroughs in quantum computing. And I'm not sure, do you know what that is?
Quantum computing, yeah, it's a lot faster computing. You know, when you do math, it's to the power of what we have now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This thing, and it's powerful. There'll be no more secrets.
Right.
Everything's exposed. Everybody, when this quantum computing, and they want it up and running by 2035, and most people believe it's already up and running. So, but computing, which I believe will make it possible for the single authority like the Antichrist to exert unprecedented control over global systems. Wired magazine is warning about what they are called Q Day, or Quantum Day, the day someone builds a quantum computer that can crack the most widely used forms of encryption. And the article goes on further to say that most believe it's already has a base, a foundation. It's going to escalate, but they talk about how when this actually breaks through, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but from what the article says, instead of millions of different types of computers, everything's going to be run by one, the quantum computer. And that no one's information, like you have your PIN numbers and all this stuff to protect your information, all that's gone. This quantum computer can get in your bank accounts, medical, anything you think is secret, it's not secret. It'll be able to break into military, bank systems, everything. And it will be able to control the system. So when you apply that to the Antichrist, when he comes on the scene, that, he's going to want to control the world, and many believe it will be through quantum computer system. However it advances from here, I don't know. But it's up and running now. And they say that, from the typical person like you and I, Q Day wouldn't be recognizable at all, because it's going to begin short, small things that you think maybe just as a glitch or something in your computer. It won't be. It'll be slowly this new computer taking hold, okay? And that's what the Bible talks about, advanced technology and people running around looking, for intelligence. And this stuff is here today. And this is small. This is small stuff. When we start getting into other areas here, that we start talking about the Middle East. And I want to read 2 Peter 3:3-4. It says, Most importantly, I want to remind you that in the last days, scoffers will come, mocking the truth and following their own desires. They will say, what happened to the promise that Jesus is coming again? From before the times of our ancestors, everything has remained the same since the world. So, what I'm sure you all know what a scoffer is. Somebody that unbelief makes fun of, why you believing in that stuff. But and you ask around, well, why do they scoff like that? Well, the verse goes on to say, they are mocking the truth. Why? Because of their own desires. In other words, their own fleshly desires has lead them, and I believe that a lot of people today are in what the Bible called debased thinking. You look at, okay, let's go back to the Olympics this year, the opening scene. I have never watched it, and I don't want to watch it. How they mocked the Lord's Supper, had Jesus portrayed as a transgender homosexual, and I read what the one pastor said, short, fat, dumpy guy that looked like Satan himself, and he was portraying Christ. Okay, that's debased thinking. But let me ask you a question. Right now in America, there are more babies being murdered than all the deaths of all the wars that America has ever fought every year. And people, you get into the article where people think that abortion, there's nothing wrong with it. We need to keep it going because it's a health system. Is that debased thinking?
Yes.
Absolutely is. It's demonic. You see what's going on over in the Middle East. And just this morning, the president of Turkey, that he wrote in, or whatever his name is, because it's a Muslim holy month over there. He prayed or made a statement that because of what we see going on in Palestine, which is Gaza, they believe it's Palestine, which it's not. He says he prays for Allah to destroy Israel. Now, the point is here, the Bible talks about that he's going to, in the latter days, Israel is going to become a stumbling block to the world. What is the one nation you hear more about today than anyone else in the world? Israel. What's going on in Israel? What the Jews are doing. And that's another thing. The anti-Semitism. Have you ever seen such hatred towards Jews? We haven't. And it has surpassed World War II, with hating Jews. Let me see. In New York, now this is 2024, there have been more than 10,000 anti-Semitic incidents in the U.S. in the year since October 7th. Hamas territories attacking Israel, according to ADL, preliminary data, is the highest number of incidents ever recorded in a single year since 1979. There are more attacks on Jews last year than since 1979. The annual report about, let's see, back up here. Okay, get back up. And I'm just going to ask this as a question. Why do you think the world is hating Jews so much right now? What have they done?
They're God's chosen people.
Yeah,
They're God's chosen people.
and the Bible says it's going to happen.
Okay? You look at, do you realize right now that most of the world agrees that what happened last year, October 7th, when Israel was attacked, was okay? How do you figure that? Okay, and it goes back to the debased thinking that God said would happen in the last days. You know, you look at World War II. What did the Jews do in World War II? What did the Jews do to deserve their treatment now? Nothing. Okay? Why do people hate the Jews today? Because they are God's people, because they are of Satan. Which is not just another sign telling us that we're in the end times, the hatred of Jews. You look at persecution of Christians. Right now, worldwide, 1 in 7 Christians are persecuted. 1 in 5 in Africa, 2 in 5 in Asia. Last year, almost 4,500 Christians were murdered, over 7,000 churches attacked, and over almost 5,000 Christians have been imprisoned. The number of countries rated as extreme to very high persecuted of Christians rose from 23 in 2015 to 55 in 2023. And I would venture to guess that that has, again, grown since 2023. Jesus told us in Matthew that, you know, in the last days, people are going to hate you. But why do they hate us?
Because they hated Christ.
Because they hate him more. Started with him. So again, we see events like these that are telling us to look up. Hey, Geraldine, let me ask you a question. When you were growing up, wasn't it expected for people to go to church?
Yes, and you would dress in your very best.
Yep. You went to church.
And you went to church.
When I'm sure we can all, when I was a kid, you know, Sunday morning, all the church, I can remember driving up the Water Street, it was called, to the church we went to, and there were other churches along the way. You know, the parking lots were full. What do you see today?
Empty.
Okay? It's, the Bible talks about in the latter days there will be a falling away. Last meeting I went to for pastors, guys were talking about how it's normal right now. A lot of churches have 4 and 10 people attending where they used to be full.
We
So-
see it everywhere. You go by Phillipsville Church, you know what I mean?
There's some churches merging with each other.
Yeah, that, get going. Yes, they did. It's here, and here's an interesting thought. People often talk, well, look, you see the persecution in other countries. What about here? Okay, well, let's look at that just for a minute. When you witness, look at the times that you just feel an oppression or a rejection of Jesus Christ. When you talk to family, they don't want nothing to do with it. You know, you realize that that is one of the areas of persecution that we deal with. Because what's it do to us when family members don't want to know nothing about God?
Discouraging us.
It hurts. It's persecution. It's the same thing, neighbors and stuff. You see all these people, even to the point where, and I'm sure you see people on TV, famous people, and rich and all this stuff, and where do they stand with Christ? You know, and how they deny Christ, and you know, I don't know, I'm sure it does you. Boy, do they actually realize what they're doing?
You just don't get it.
Yeah. See, that's persecution. Okay? And here's something that when you talk about Middle East and we look at Europe, now I'll tell you what I've noticed in just the past couple months. And I'm just famous movie stars that live in Europe. I can remember, there's a site that I often get on, it talks about the religion of people, where these movie stars, a lot of them said, well, I'm a Christian, or, I'm a Catholic. But just in the past month, these same people, because Europe right now is the majority Muslim, that they have switched from Christianity and other religions to being Islam, because there is such influence in Europe. And hold on to that now. Okay. With the political issues that are going on in the Middle East, with President Trump trying to broker peace treaties, and I am not finding fault with President Trump. We thank the Lord every day that he's in office, with the backbone he's got to stand up. But in brokering these peace treaties, and I do not pretend to understand it all, Europe has been kind of isolated, and that President Trump has moved our military and a lot of funding away from Europe, because he doesn't want to be a policeman of the world anymore. He doesn't want the United States. We've got to focus on certain things. So it has caused Europe to all of a sudden to wake up. They no longer have the U.S. as a guard. So they have to, and they've already done it, implemented billions of dollars to get their military up to grade. And there's a reason for this, is that, and this has just happened in the past couple of weeks, guys, where Europe understands now they got to build up big. Okay, their nuclear weapons, everything. What they don't understand is that the reason why this is happening is that in the very near future, the Antichrist comes out of Europe, which at that point in time is an extremely powerful nation. Okay? Not only that, when the rapture occurs, you got to understand the United States will be pretty much finished. Because out of all the countries in the world, the United States will lose the most people during the rapture, which is a good thing. But here's the sad part. The rapture will almost not affect Europe in any way, because less than 2% of the people in Europe right now say they are Christian. That's how far Europe has been taken over, okay? So you see, and it talks about this in Daniel, in Daniel chapter 2, the statue that is made. And it talks about certain parts of the statue in accordance with certain empires. The bottom of the toes are made of iron and clay, which people now see as Europe, because the Antichrist comes out of Europe as a revised Roman Empire. Okay, so we have I don't want to put it, a scene here where people don't recognize, and I'm sure President Trump doesn't even recognize it. But the buildup in Europe is precisely what the Bible says has got to happen in the latter days. Okay? Let's see here. And here's another, being a wake-up call for Europe, France, Germany, and several others, because they now see they can't depend on the United States, are looking right now for someone to lead them, a world leader to help them through this chaos that they're in. Right now, they're looking for that. we look at wars and rumors of wars. Now I'm sure you all know about Russia and Ukraine, but here's a new one. Well, I mean, you realize Iran has a nuclear threat. You see what Israel is doing in Gaza, and they're not done. And they're going to be dealing with Lebanon. We see what's happening with, America has had one aircraft carrier and the fleet of ships with them, but they just sent a second one over there. And it's to take on the Houthis, who are trying to close the strait between the Red Sea and the Adrian Ocean. And it's hard to, no. Anyways, we're seeing an escalation there of United States bombing in Yemen, which is just down from Egypt. But now here's the big thing. Within the past couple of weeks, the United States has moved 7 of our strategic bombers, the B-82, I think it was, and it's Diego Garcia. It's a remote British-controlled island in the Indian Ocean, which is about 3,500 miles from Tehran and Iran and all them guys. Now they have 7 bombers there and several other B-52 bombers, plus all kinds of refueling planes, plus several hundred fighter jets on both carriers and land-based fighters. Reason being, Iran is away, they figure about a week or 2 away from being able to make a nuclear bomb, or actually 6 of them. Now, Iran has not been silent. Iran wants to eliminate Israel. And of course, you see what Turkish president has said, and the Ayatollah Khomeini goofy guy.
Ayatollah Khomeini.
Yeah. Is constantly saying they want to destroy Israel.
And we're next. And we're next because little is Israel and they want to annihilate us.
Now, our strategic bombers, why would you move 7 of them from the United States to an island in the Indian Ocean? Okay. Number one, because they are the only ones that can carry the 2,000-pound bunker bombs that they will use against Iran's nuclear sites. Plus, in Yemen, is it Yemen? No, let me think. Oh boy, I'm sorry, I forgot the country, but Iran itself is massing, again, thousands of missiles in underground bunkers. Plus, they're going to be building a nuclear weapons. Most theologians believe that we're going to see something big, really big, within this month or next month. And here's the thing, when the United States does bomb Iran and Yemen, Russia is Iran's ally. How far it goes, we don't know yet. But here's the thing, and we have to remember that everything that happens right now is like on a checkerboard. Something else is going to happen. The birth pains Jesus talks about are going to continue. We look at Ezekiel 38, and I gave you the maps there. Did you get a map, Carol?
Yes.
Okay. Just look at that. It's something for you to look at, because it tells the countries that are going to come against Israel. here's the thing. A lot of the things we're seeing today are a preparation, a platform for future events that can only happen when the church is gone. Now, here's interesting things about this. We look at Turkey, Syria, Iraq, Jordan are part of the countries of Ezekiel 38. The main countries are Russia, Turkey, Libya, Iran, Sudan, are now forming alliances. Never before are these countries formed an alliance. And there, you'll see some of the countries on that map. You have to read through it. It will tell you who they are. So when we see these things aligning, there's a part of this that has always stumped people. Because when you read Ezekiel 38, it says that they come in hordes on horses and other animals, and people could, why? What did Ezekiel see that he calls them horses? Or was it literally horses? Well, here's the interesting thing. Since Russia and Ukraine have been in wars, Russia alone has lost nearly 7,000 to 10,000 tanks and 15,000 military vehicles. Russia's armament is at its low. It has never been so low since World War II. What they have done, and let me back up, the reason why they have lost so many tanks and military vehicles is because both Ukraine and Russia have gone from tanks and stuff to drones. Drones that can be produced for $200 a piece and can be fit with explosives to be flown over and destroy a $10 million tank. So, what's the bottom line here? Well, Russia right now is using horses, camels, and mules to escort equipment, and troops are riding horses, camels, and mules to get the battlefields. When is the last time this happened? I can tell you, World War I. So when we look at this modern nation of Russia, now they're using horses and camels and mules. They have approximately 10,000 camels and almost that many horses to transport men and equipment.
You know, I've often wondered, the Valley of Armageddon, the Bible talks about how there's going to be blood up to a horse's bridle.
Yeah.
And I've often wondered where all that blood's going to come from. Is it going to be all people? But now I'm thinking, it just occurred to me, maybe it has to do with animals as well. Maybe that's why there's so much blood.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, it's
I'm
true.
just wondering. It's just a thought.
And don't get confused. Ezekiel 38 war is different from the Battle of Armageddon. Ezekiel 38 is the beginning of the tribulation, at the beginning.
Oh, okay.
Armageddon is at the end, okay, of the tribulation period.
But in Armageddon, will they be using horses and
Yes,
mules
yes.
too?
But what you have to understand, okay, this Ezekiel 38 war, when Russia and all these countries come against Israel over the mountains, God destroys them. We don't, Bible doesn't tell, well, will these countries be able to recuperate their military equipment? Well, right after Ezekiel 38 begins, or ends, somewhere the tribulation begins. And then it's a whole new ballgame there. Battle of Armageddon is all the countries of the world coming together, including, because you can't forget China here. China isn't in the Ezekiel 38 war, but sometime in the tribulation, after the half period, China comes with its hordes of tanks. Okay, so how much equipment are these other countries going to have? We don't know. We're not going to be here. Doesn't matter. But the Battle of Armageddon is when all these countries, including China, when God comes back, that's when we're going to fight God now. Okay, so Ezekiel 38 is different. Ezekiel 38 clearly states, that when they come over the mountains, it says Russia, Iran, and Turkey, and all its members, which is all these other little countries that side with them. These other countries, they don't, I mean, you look at, I think it's Sudan, okay, Libya, and all these little countries. They're not military might. I was just reading, I like to get on these military sites where it talks about some of these smaller countries, like I think it's Libya or Sudan. They have a total for their whole country of 3 tanks. Okay. So they're not military might, but they join in with Iran, and Turkey and Russia they have thousands of tanks. Okay. How many are left? Again, we don't know. And you also got to understand, when they talk about coming over the mountains, tanks aren't especially great for climbing mountains. Okay, so how are they going to get there? Horses, mules, and donkeys, and camels. But God destroys them. You can see why. Then it talks about Israel will be cleaning up the mess for 7 some years. Okay? So we have a picture here, a very broad picture of what's happening in the Middle East. You have Europe going on. You have the United States and Israel, and Gaza, and Yemen taking on Iran, bombing nuclear sites. You have Russia and Ukraine, and that's not getting any better. I don't know what's going to happen there. So you have that conflict, and then you have the enemies of Israel: Hamas, Houthis, Hezbollah, the Iraq National Guard, or whatever they call them, plus all these factions that side with these groups. Then you have, let me catch the situation in Turkey. You look what's happening in Turkey, and then Turkey wants to run Sudan. Sudan is being run by ISIS right now. So there is, it's just escalating with every day that goes by. And we need to understand that no one person, no one treaty is going to take care of this. What's going to eventually happen, and will happen, is that the church is going to be taken, and then, to coin a phrase, all hell's going to break loose. But can you see the situation? Look at the lawlessness today. Let's just look at the United States, okay? And this is debased thinking. For years, we've heard about green, go green, get electric cars. Biden wanted to make a law that everybody has to get an electric car. So Elon Musk comes along and has a company for electric cars. And what's happening today with Elon Musk?
He's being persecuted.
Yeah, and I mean, they're burning electric cars, and they say that's green. Give me a break. Jeez. But that's just part of the lawlessness. Have you ever seen in the United States, I mean, how many of you are surprised when you turn on the news and you see a mass shooting? It's everyday news. All the crime, all the hatred, all the bitterness, everything that's going on just in the United States is telling us, you know, that the spirit of the Antichrist is already here. And it's going to continue to escalate. Matthew 24:8 says, but all this is only the first of the birth pains, with more to come. What's that tell us about the things we are seeing? These are birth pains. You look at, okay, earthquakes. How many major earthquakes have we had in this past week? A lot of them. Luke 21:28, and when these things begin to come pass, then look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption is drawing more. Jesus used these two illustrations to show us that when we see these things, they are the beginning, and they will intensify and become more frequent. And this is a quote from an article by Jonathan Brentner. It's called, Do You Feel It Too? While today's lawlessness and widespread violence upsets us, we find some degree of relief in knowing that the Lord sees all the evil of our day, even far beyond what's apparent to us. Not only that, but he will judge with equity, because not only does he see all things, he knows the intent of the heart. The Lord sees the murderous rampages of our time, as well as the over-the-top wickedness. It is enough to know that just at the perfect time, he will intervene in world affairs in an unmistakable way, or the rapture. We cannot know the exact time, but we know that we live in the season of his appearing. Don't you believe that? And then, I hope I can find it real quick. It was an article by, let me, real quick here. Oh yeah, and I forgot this one. Russia and Chinese are having war games near Japan. These deployments, possibly coordinated, signal a new trend that aims to challenge and examine Tokyo's defense system. And the earthquake that just occurred in, was it Thailand? Over 1,700 people are now missing, dead. I wonder. I may not be that important. Okay, well, I wanted to read you a portion from Amir Sarfate. I'll just try to. He was talking how, now the guy's brilliant, well-informed. He gets all the latest intelligence. He lives in Israel. His ministry is in Israel. He travels the world. He meets all these high influential people. And he wrote just this morning that, or was it yesterday, that he has never seen the situation like he sees in the world today. That everywhere, no matter where you go, he goes, there is problems, there is war, there is famine. He talked about the weather, he talked about just in the Middle East, and he went through several fractions that most people don't even hear about because the news don't talk about it. But Israel right now is fighting like a 4 or 5 front war. The United States, because we're involved now, we're gonna be fighting in Yemen, Libya, possibly Iran, and, I forget the other country where they have their nuclear sites. So we're talking multi-front wars that aren't just going away. Russia and Ukraine are gonna continue fighting. We see escalation in Europe, in Germany. All these things, he says, are telling us that, you know, the rapture of the church is going to be very, very near. Because once these things escalate to a point, and he goes, they're almost at that point right now, nothing else can grow, nothing else can get worse until the church is gone. He says that's where we're at. We're, along with Jonathan Brentner, they like to use, we are in that season. In other words, right now we're in the season of spring, aren't we? We know summer's coming. And that's what the Bible says. When you see, you know, leaves coming, when you see, you know, spring is here, you know, summer is coming. Well, we're in that season where we see these things happening, so we know without a benefit of
Shadow.
doubt, yeah, that the rapture of the church is imminent, meaning next. Now you get an argument, some will say, well, you can't tell when. Well, no, not the day or hour, but God gives us a season. How long these seasons, we can't go by our seasons, we go by God's season, his timetable. But he doesn't tell us these things just to lead us out and let us hang and dry. He doesn't say that. He gives us these things, you know, don't, in so many words, don't be a scoffer. Because a scoffer, you know, if we believe in the rapture of the church is imminent, we believe that Jesus Christ is coming soon, it cuts away the lust of the world and keeps us focused on the Lord. We need to understand that, you know, this world is in its last moments. And the lust of the world, the money of the world, the pride, and all this stuff. What is left for the unsaved person? Nothing. But what does the saved person have to look forward to? Everything. And that's why we need to be focused and believe in the rapture. And this is what is sad for many churches that don't preach the rapture, because if you think Jesus is coming, and that's our hope he's coming, what are we going to be doing?
Looking
up.
Well, looking up and being his servants.
praying.
That's how it cuts away the lust of the world for people who are lost and debased thinking. I mean, they look at us and they think we're nuts. We look at them and know they're nuts because we have the right thinking mind. We have Christ in us.
God lives in our
And
hearts.
we have what they need. They may not know it, they may reject it, but that's not our fault. If they reject what we tell them, when they stand before Christ, they will have no excuse, because Jesus is going to say, hey, no, I sent my servant to you and you rejected it. What do you think they're going to remember every day for all eternity in hell?
Their rejection.
The day they rejected it. So I realize that a lot of this, there's so much to talk about with this stuff, and I hope it made some sense to you. It's hard. I'll tell you, it's difficult to get all this stuff down in paragraphs. When these writers, I mean, they're brilliant, and they write pages of this stuff, and you start reading it, and your mind starts going, what did you just say?
It's a lot to digest, and you did very well, Pastor. Thank you.
Well, hopefully it lets you know that Jesus is coming soon.